Hello there. Monday, August the 5th, 2024. Um, Hope you're doing well. Wanted to take a little break from, going around the world in the different sports. We had a lovely conversation, me, myself, and I, in a little circle, um, about football last week. But today, I'm kind of going to go into something that's really important with coaches, and that's it's important for the aspiring coach. It's also important for the coach who manages other coaches, like I do. And that's, what's your why? It's very important, and it really isn't asked that often in interviews. It should be, isn't. So when I look at what my why is, number one, I come from a place of empathy because I have a kid in the program. I have a kid in a lot of sports, and so being that my fiefdom that I coach in is Special Olympics, so obviously I have empathy. These people are like family to me, both the athletes and the caregivers. Caregivers can be professional caregivers, they can be family members. We have a variety of different backgrounds. But you develop a sense of empathy in people, and you want to do something to make the world a little less crappy, or even be a nice place. And what Special Olympics is able to do more times than not is to accomplish actually turning it into a nice place. Gives them the glory of sport. You teach sports and life, they just go hand in hand. Excuse me, like that. So this is butting heads. So sorry, we don't do editing around here. Yeah, it's kind of like this. They go together. You will find that as you teach life, you teach sports, and vice versa. It happens all the time, and I think that's a great thing. It also gives them the chance to be with their own kind. Lack of judgment. You get to be among your own tribe, and it's very helpful. And in so doing, you're able to actually taste achievement, where in most of their life, any of these athletes' lives, they're basically put in places where they're controlled, or everything's done for them, or they're not challenged that much. But what we do in our movement, and I think across the whole country, if not the whole world, we really do a pretty good job of treating them like they're neurotypical kids, all the way up to age 80 or so. But giving them the chance to succeed without feeling some stigma that they're different. And I told you about the 3 levels of cognitive ability within Special Olympics. The top cognitive level, it's very easy to treat them just like any other person you meet on the street. Just, there's a couple of things, maybe they got just a couple of little issues or whatever. So does everybody. Some people are just sphincter boys or whatever. Everybody's got an issue. Theirs are just a little bit more about, sound and colors and all that other stuff. But a lot of people have issues. So it blends in a little bit. But your moderate cognitives, it begins to be a little more obvious, that they're having trouble. So, it's, you've really got to have your empathy on for them, and really the nonverbal, particularly in the lower cognitive levels. So you treat them, you try to treat them the same, but you can't. You just give them the sense of empathy that they need. So that's a big piece about what my why is. Another piece of what my why is that is my boy's 22 now, and I do this for him. In fact, I do this channel for him because there's literally not even dozens. There's literally 2 dozen people watching this right now, unless it's been found in some archive or something, by a bunch of new people, which would be great. But at the time of filming, I'm sitting here with maybe 30 people, and that's okay. As I said a long time ago, that when they put me in a pine box, this will be something my son can remember me by. And he can realize that I had the gift for gab, and it wasn't just a rumor. Or a legend. Legend, yeah. At least that's the word I like to use. So if that's all it is, it's all it is. I want it to be more of a conversation piece with more and more people, but if it grows, it grows. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I mean, not everything works out, the way that you want it to. But at a very minimum, it's something that he'll have that he can hopefully treasure, because he'll be able to look me up and see me and interact. Hear me, not just see pictures. I think that's one of the best things about doing this. But he's my reason too. I want to make sure that this thing is around a long time past the time I go room temperature. And I think that's where you're talking legacy. That's where you're talking leaving something for your kids and things of that nature. So that's important to me. Another piece of my why is that I'm competitive. We won a state title in Special Olympics. Is it the same as winning the PIAA? Of course not. It's not. The level of competition isn't the same. But when we go up there, they get authenticity. We go up to state tournaments, or we go to regional tournaments, or we just go to an invitational somewhere, and it's authenticity. We're in a battle to win. I get no salary. I don't even get no medals. I don't get no trophy. I don't get no plaques. Might get my picture taken. But what I get are pretty cool memories. And that's a good thing. I'll take it. Because I know what it's done for the athletes that I'm dealing with. And I realize what it does for their lives, what it does for their confidence. Because again, you teach perseverance, you teach confidence, discipline, all kinds of different things. All while they're having fun. You wanna get them in a fun mentality. You don't want to make it work. I'm not Tom Coughlin, from the old Giants. I'm not gonna sit there and yell at them. I'll get into them if I see that they're dogging it, or they're playing around, or they're yakking too much. I'll get into them a little bit, but not often. It's usually just enough. Gotten pretty decent at that. So these are the reasons that I do things, and that competition piece is like I said, is a piece of it too. But not that I get anything. It's that I'm competitive for them. I had one year where we were up at the state tournament for basketball, and the other team was literally out to injure our players. And they're like family to me, as I said. So I literally, had my 5 going down the lane and getting punched in the ribs. Literally punched, not some wayward arm flapping around. It's an actual punch. And one of my forwards was on the ground, was on the floor, with a loose ball up around his head. And he had 2 hands on it. He did it right. Kid guy had to be about 275, 300. Giggling, takes 2 steps, does a belly flop on him, on his low back. Doesn't even reach for the ball. No foul called. They gave us possession. How generous. He didn't reach for the freaking ball. I lost my effing mind. I went nuts on the inside. I was very angry. I had some words for the other coach. The other coach wouldn't even shake my hand. He wouldn't even look at me after the game. But he injured some of the players, including the one on the floor. Like he almost couldn't walk. You get to a point where it's a band of brothers kind of concept. And some coaches, you're there to do a job and you go home and there's nothing wrong with that. And some of us, it's a band of brothers or it's a band of sons. Or a band of daughters or a band of both. We're actually unisex. It just happens to be that it's been very rare we've had a girl up at that top level. They're in our moderate cognitives all the time. They're mostly girls, actually. It's about 50-50 in our mid-tier. And I use basketball because that's the most readily some of the stories that I can tell because there's so much contact. Some of the other sports are involved with are just as competitive. They're just not contact sports. So I have stories to tell people. But the main thing is we're a can-do society, disguised as a movement of people who are thought of as less and have to argue that they're not. We don't even hear that. We go into the gym and we work. We go into we get suited and booted. We go out on the floor on a tournament day and we just wreck people. Sportsmanlike. With skill. We don't hurt people. We don't swing at people. We take those swings and we take those people trying to hurt us. Don't give it back to them. We play the game the right way. And we're pretty freaking dominant. And it's fun. So I don't get a thing for it other than the memories and the family atmosphere. It's like a dysfunctional family. And yeah, you get your black sheep every once in a while, but for the most part, they're all really, really good. So when I'm managing people, I'm managing a coaching staff, and as you saw in my July 1st episode, is sometimes there's insubordination going on, and it kind of wrecks the brew. It really does. If you think of yourself as a beer maker or a beer meister, and you unfortunately you make it a little hoppy, or you make it a little yeasty, whatever, and the whole batch has to be thrown out. It just feels bad. It doesn't taste right. And you got standards before and after. But sometimes you run into a season, or you run into a few games or a few practices or whatever, where there's a serious problem. So you have to look at what that person's why is. And it helps to do it on the front end. What I've also learned is it's good to do some social aspect outside of the sports with those coaches. So you really get to know who they are. And so now, speaking from the basketball perspective, our staff is fantastic. I'll put them against anyone going into next year, going into 2025. And our season starts February 1st. And we'll end up in the end of June, or the beginning of June. First weekend in June, or the second weekend in June, depends on when they make that state tournament into. February 1st. We practice on Saturday, so we already know when we're starting. It's already circled on the calendar. They care about it, we care about it. But getting tighter with the, and we, us coaches that do what we do, not for pay, we're doing it because we care. We're doing it for the right reasons. Sometimes not. And it shows. It shows in selfishness. It shows in insubordinate behavior. It shows in bad temperament, and bad technique, and a lack of a willingness to learn that technique. One of the things that benefits me, and it benefits some of the other really fantastic coaches I have around me, is having a kid in the program, but also knowing how special needs kids think and process information, both verbal and nonverbal, physical and by spoken word. And when you learn those things from the therapists and the people that work with your kids, or you learn it as part of being a teacher in the system, then it turns you into that's your superpower. That turns you into a fantastic coach in our ecosystem. It really does. Some of our coaches, myself hopefully part of that, could be very successful coaching neurotypicals. But it's different skill sets. I go out to them and I would have to adjust to being able to say things once. It would be hard not to bore them because I have to operate at such a slower speed. It's like, imagine driving your car in first gear at all times. It feels like that way. You just get used to it. So if I went to a neurotypical, like a junior varsity or a varsity, or maybe a developmental team in college, that's a bit pushing it. You really have to learn to put it up and drive and go. If you thinking from a stick shift perspective, get it up in 5, not 1 and 2 and 3. You got to get it up in 5th gear as fast as you can, because these kids know what they're doing. By the time they're getting to you, they're in travel leagues and everything else. By the time they get to JV and varsity, they got a pretty good idea. Now, they've got attitude problems, or they've got things that you have to manage. They're very similar from the perspective of they're still kids, right? There's still hormonal issues. There's still some of them just come from bad places. They come from bad faith. Some of them will surprise you how good they are, but they all operate at a faster speed. So that would be an adjustment I would have to make, similar to the way that they would have to make that adjustment if they came to coach in our dojo. They would have to get very, 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 very into the weeds. And not everybody can do that. We don't get the opportunity to play X's and O's and, nearly the way we want to. Everything's very basic if we're doing it right. Because if we try to get too fancy, we'd have to have a team of kids that are saying they're special needs but aren't really special needs. And there are programs that do that. And it's pathetic. But that's just not the way we're going to operate. But we don't get to do the laboratory stuff where, hey, wouldn't it be cool to do a 1-3-1 trap, corner traps, 1-3-1 full court, half court presses, all kinds of stuff. Maybe if you get lucky with the recruiting, and you find kids that you can break that down to, and maybe over the course of a season or two, because they keep coming back and you're building something, maybe you can build yourself up to a level where you can start doing some of those really cool Professor Alfie kind of stuff. But until then, it's really basic stuff. When you try to introduce stuff too quickly, they short circuit. So again, my whys are manyfold, as I say, and one I probably haven't said is that I enjoy learning. I learned a lot from the therapy realm, and so I know that the basic movements in so many sports are similar. So, for example, we're starting soccer now. We just had our first practice. And we're just doing some basic work. And isn't it interesting when you get on the one-on-one drills, how freaking similar the defensive stance has to be between basketball and soccer? Who knew? We did. We, not me, many of us. So when we're teaching the basic stances, basic movements, we encourage these kids to play several sports throughout the year. We coach several sports throughout the year. That's good for them. Less repetitive use injuries, more activities that they get to do. It's like a 4 seasons kind of thing. And I think it's cool because they need that. They need it. They need the activity. They need the camaraderie. God. Excuse me. Camaraderie. Yes. They need that just as much as we do. We get the camaraderie with the athletes, but also with the other parents, also with the other coaches and volunteers. And I've made some lifelong friends. So these are all my whys. Some people just come here and I want to put this on my LinkedIn at work. I want people to think I'm a cool guy. I'm nice. Or maybe I come here because I want to control stuff. I had a guy early last basketball season came in for the first, for 1 week. Just to see what was going on. He, coaches AAU and all this other stuff. And the vibe all over him was, I want to control everything. That's earned, man. There's a world of difference between AAU and that, and I was educating him on it. Funny how when I educated him on it, we never saw him again. Not in my house. Matumbo, right? I'm amazed sometimes. Sometimes people just need to control things. Sometimes people need to feel important, or they need to be in. They have some sort of ego thing. I think of ego as something you put on a hat rack when you walk in the gym, or you walk on the field, or you walk in the natatorium if it's swimming, whatever it is. You put your ego on a hook. You put on the empathy like a suit of armor, because you're going to have to be patient. You're going to have to think on their terms, at their speed, not on their terms, but on the terms of their speed of processing things and everything else. You have to literally. It's like you start in America in the morning and you take a trip to France. You're not speaking English anymore. Now you got to speak French. It's different. The culture's different. The speed is different. The feel is different. Everything's different. And you have to be multilingual in this respect. It's not for everybody. But if you're down for the cause, then it's just part of what you got to do. And it's not patting anybody particularly on the back. We all bring different skill sets. What excites me is the group of coaches that we have across our entire spectrum of sports is pretty freaking talented now. We only have really a couple of miscreants. And over time, they'll either be, they'll find the religion, or they'll find something else to do. Because the why is everything. If the why is wrong, you're in the wrong place. If the why is right, the rest of it's just details. It's just style. It's just, the substance is there. If your why is right, your substance is there. And you're going to be able to learn. You're going to want to learn. You're going to love to learn. Some of the most fulfilling work I've ever done. And I think I've heard that come out of the mouths of other coaches too. So, that's my why. And no matter what challenges I may have been through, anybody that's been watching this channel for a while, you saw how, the shoulder injury that I never had surgery for, had to rehab it. There's a lot of reasons I could have just hung things up. But the interesting thing is, I needed them as much as they needed me. I needed some sense of community to lean back into. And they needed me. So I kept posting. And a lot of people posted back for me. And we're all the same like this. When one of us is in trouble, we have the tendency to be pretty close. And we help each other as much as we can. And we do the same thing for the athletes. I mean, there's an extent that you don't go across. There's a school of thought that says, hey, you should have nothing to do with that. Well, that's hard. That's hard. Because you want to build a family atmosphere. You don't want to get too close. You don't want to get into the dramas. The complication for me specifically is in the Special Olympics, in our structure in Pennsylvania, as we've gone into a regional process. We have 7 or 8 counties are into a region. There's 9 regions throughout Pennsylvania. But each county has a team leader. And what team leader is it's the unfortunate schlub who takes a job, pays nothing. He kind of has to supervise all the coaches, and he has to supervise, a management team, which is a board of directors to most people. It's just different nomenclature, wordsmithing, verbiage, words, whatever. Every once in a while, I like to use a nice big word. It's a thing. Anyway, we draw straws, and then somebody must have cheated, so I got the job. But then you want to do a good job for them, because there's things that happen. There's discipline issues. There's coaches have questions. What can they do? They need advocacy for towards the parent organization for certain things, and you want to fight for your kids. And if I'm there for the coaches, because I'm a coach too. The coaches are trying to get away with something. I gotta take them. I gotta say, hey, let's have a sidebar in private. But whenever I can, I'm in the yes business. And it's important because I understand. So that complicates things as far as not to getting too close. I unfortunately have to get close because I'm supervising some of these kids that don't know some of the things that they're getting into. So your whys have to be very solid when you get into a situation like this, because seeing some of the situations, these kids are very trusting, and seeing some of the situations that they can get themselves into is borderline frightening sometimes. Getting them the resources they need, making sure they keep themselves out of trouble. It's almost like part of my why, or part of my job description, is to be in the to be a parole officer. Not that any of them have records, that's not what I mean. It's like that. It's like they kind of checking in with them, making sure you're staying out of trouble, keeping your nose clean. But not because they're a bunch of criminal hoodlums. It's because they're too trusting. It's very different. They want the same things you and I want. They all do. Sometimes they go about it a little bit wrong, or a little bit cockeyed, or a little bit too trusting in a world that doesn't earn that trust anymore. There's so many bad things going on, especially in the digital realm. They need a little protection. So that's what we do. Me and my team, but I take that job, I take it very seriously. And my first oath in any job that I do is don't suck. So I could short arm it all day. I could short arm the job, and I could absolutely get away with doing almost nothing because I don't get paid anything. I could absolutely do that. But then your moral code kicks in and you go, you know what? I'm not an a-hole though. So I want to do the right things. I want to help people, whether it's helping the athletes or helping the caregivers. Whether it's a kid having a tantrum, very angry, a lot of fatherless boys, a lot more than you'd expect. Stuff like that. And you step in a little bit. And no, you're not dad. You're not going to be dad, because you can't be dad to so many people. Some of them you can get pretty close to. Some of them, they're curmudgeons. You just kind of watch them from a distance. You kind of figure, you get a feel for it, right? So that's part of my why too, is that I'm kind of like part dad, part big brother, part parole officer, all that stuff. But then the part I really enjoy is the coaching. You get out on the hardwood, you get out on the practice field, whatever it is that you're playing. It's just enjoyable because they get so much joy from what they're doing. You go to softball, and they run out every ball. Now go watch a Major League Baseball game and tell me how often they run them all out. Some of the guys do. A lot of the guys, it's like, well, hit it right at somebody. Yeah, I guess I'll just kind of jog. That's not in their code. They're doing the work as much as they can. I like that. It's fulfilling. And when you see that light bulb go off, that's the last piece of why I'll leave you with, because we're getting long in the tooth here. So we're getting long in the tooth here. But here's the last piece of my why. When you see that little spark go off, when they understand. I've never done a drug in my whole life, but that's got to be what that feels like. That is the coolest thing. When you see that they get it, that's what it's about. So I just kind of want to put this on film. Maybe it'll amuse 3 or 4 people. Maybe it'll get to a broader audience. Maybe nobody will care. Maybe it'll be really just the subject of ridicule. Don't really care. And you can't stop me. I'm going to put it on. I'm going to upload this thing anyway. Maybe this is just Jim's little therapy session. 33 and a half minutes of it so far. Very long one. They're going to get shorter soon. I promise. Little programming note. Next week, I'm gonna go back to the sports a little bit. I'm gonna go into one of my favorite sports, and that's bowling, and go into the many things that are wrong with that, and the dichotomy of the health between the professional women and the professional men. Will be a big piece of it. Youth bowling, a big piece of it. Two-handed bowling. No. Gives you a little clue as to where I'm going to go. Week after, I'm going to really look at international football, soccer in this country. Then I'm going to take another week, and I'm going to say, you know what? I'm kind of going to go into, how does I title on this thing again? Oh yeah. I'm going to go into how a team really takes on the character of its coach. This is a big one. Any of you ever watched Gary Williams back in the day when he coached the Maryland basketball team? or Frank Martin with South Carolina. K-State before that. Kansas State before that. I mean, Bobby Knight, legendary for it. But the coaches were just tenacious. And then some of them were very ethereal, very, very, very workmanlike, very thoughtful, and their teams played that way. It's amazing how coaches take on the character and the emotional characteristics of their coach, and that we should be mindful of that. There's power and there's trouble in that. So I'm going to go into that a little bit. Then as we get into September, we're going to do basketball. Boy, is that going to be a target-rich environment. And then we're going to go to what is probably the most manly sport left alive, and that is hockey. That's about as far out. That's on September 9th. So that's about as far out as I've planned. It's something I've never really done. I've always done a lot of ad hoc, spur of the moment. I'll figure it out. But I'm really trying to plan the content a little bit more. So this is probably the longest one you're ever going to see, I hope. Sorry in advance. Well, actually, sorry after the fact. I already did it to you. So, 38 minutes of digital mediocrity. And you're welcome, by the way. And I don't mind doing this again next week. It probably will not be 38, 39 minutes worth. But you just never know. Would love to hear from more of you. So please like, comment, subscribe, hit the ringy dingy, and say all so you get all the digital goodness, mediocrity, whatever you like to call it. Digital cesspool. I've heard names. It's okay. I'm not fragile. But also share it to others that, like-minded people who, maybe you got some time to kill, like 38, 39 minutes, and wouldn't mind getting into the conversation of maybe having some influence over how coaching is done, whether at a small level, at a large level, whatever. You never know where these conversations can lead. Try not to make it a completely academic exercise, but you just never know where it's going to go. So, love to have the conversation down in the comments. Probably sometime late in September or October, I'm probably going to try to interview a couple of athletes as well. So, I'll leave that as to be determined in the very, very near future. So, again, please send it to as many people as possible. I'd love to see this thing grow. A couple thousand people would be nice. Have some convo. So again, thanks for stopping by. Be active. Go out. Be good to each other. And I will see you next week. Peace.